Welcome to the Inner Huddle, the podcast for parents and coaches to help children fulfill their potential both on and off the pitch.
Welcome along to the Inner Huddle, Series 3, Episode 3. I'm Pez, he's Geoff, and together we are Pez and Geoff. How you doing, Geoff?
Yeah, I'm very well, thank you, Pez. How are you?
Very well, thank you. That intro goes back to when we used to have our own radio show, didn't it? So I'm Pez, he's Geoff, and together we are Pez and Geoff, which was quite amusing 5 years ago. But anyway, no, it's never been amusing, but we've stuck with it anyway. So we have a set intro and a set outro now, don't we? So it sounds like we've been doing this a while.
Yeah, well, we have, haven't we?
We have been doing this a long time. Not quite as regular as we'd like. And again, we haven't done one for a little while. I've put out a couple of extra times to fill in the gaps, but it's very difficult. Very busy people, aren't we? You with Wessex and me with Pez's street soccer and holiday camps and things recently. It's been rather busy.
Yeah, it doesn't leave a lot of time for life, does it? I'm trying to get the balance right.
We are trying to get the balance right, but we will try and aim to get one out a week going forward. I'm sure we can do it, even if we had to do one by Zoom, dare I say it. But I think we should definitely at least try, and I'll keep up with the extra time ones as well, because I've had some great feedback of those, which have been mainly around the book. I'm sure you've listened.
Yeah.
I'm sure you have. When you were bored in the bath or something, you know. It's like having me in the room, but we won't go there. So we have got 4 or 5 questions sent in by you guys, the general public, if that's the right term. And we've also got my new book, which isn't so new anymore. It's been out a few months now, but we've got that in front of us as well. So we'll do a little bit of randomness, random chapters, if you like, from the book, mixed in with the questions that have been sent in. I should just mention Wessex Futsal Club before we get going, because I'm sure our 3.8 million fans and listeners from across the world would like to know. How are you getting on, Geoff? It's been rather good, hasn't it?
Yeah, so we were bottom at Christmas of the National Futsal Series Tier 1, and we've just won 3 games on the bounce. 2 of those were at home. One was away to Derby on Sunday. So we've crept up to 6th place, 1 point behind 5th, I think. So, yeah, things are going well, and I'm a bit more positive.
Yeah, it's amazing what a couple of wins for Wessex can do. You look like a completely different person. Beaming, I should say. Beaming. Glowing. Is that the right terminology? I think it is. Right, shall we get down to business, as the song says? Again, having to adapt today because I left the printed questions at home and we only brought 1 copy of the book, which you brought in. And we used to hold the stock of the book in this room, but there isn't one, which is unfortunate. So we're having to share those. I'm having to do the questions from the laptop. But we'll cope, won't we? In fact, if I hadn't mentioned it, no one would notice. It's seamless.
Except when I'm trying to read out from my phone notes.
Oh, yeah, because you've taken a screenshot, haven't you?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. We'll make do. It's the quality of the content, not how we get to it, that's important.
That's lucky then, isn't it?
It is very lucky.
What do you want to do first? Do you want to do chapter from the book?
I think we'll go for a question first.
Question first.
Yes,
so we've got 4 questions. Question number 1, do you want me to read it?
Yes, please.
This sounds a little bit like it could be you, Pez.
Well, I did have this conversation with someone recently and included it, so it's a little bit.
I love players that can go past other players and mavericks of the game. That's the bit that sounds like you. Do you think this country will produce more flair players in the future, or has the game changed now? ?
Like I say, I had this conversation with somebody on Instagram who sent me a clip where this was being discussed. I think by Michael Owen and somebody else. I'm not sure. And they wanted to know my thoughts, and we had a bit of a conversation about it. And I thought, oh, that's great. I'll include that for the podcast. And I was saying that I don't think it's just a problem in this country. I think England, Italy and Brazil, off the top of my head, are all struggling to produce the type of flair players that they used to. If you look at the household names that are in the Italy and Brazil sides, I mean, Neymar's been there for seems like 100 years. But other than that, I don't think there's too many household names or the flair players. Certainly no Ronaldinho's, Rivaldo's. You can go back years and years and years, and they had so many flair players. Even the Roberto Carlos at fullback could have been described as a flair player. So they were full of them. Some of Italy's strike force they've had over the years, and it's just not there anymore. And England, other than Foden and perhaps Grealish, I'm not sure. I mean, Grealish doesn't really go past players, does he?
He tends to stand somebody up 1v1, doesn't he?
And get fouled.
Yeah, which I wonder if some of it is just because of the general conditioning of players. So even if you do beat a player now, might they just turn around and catch you back up again?
Yeah.
In that 1v1 scenario. But the Italians...
You can beat Kyle Walker all you like, but he's getting back, isn't he?
Yeah, the Italians always were a really solid unit, weren't they? And then would have a one-off player that would just unlock the key. Have the key to unlock the door, sorry. And it's a good question.
Well, I wrote down here the likes of McManaman, Giggs, Gaza, Joe Cole. I'm not sure if we will see the likes of those British type players again. And then I had a little think about it back in, I don't sound old, the glory days of the Premier League. And I put every team had them back in the day. So off the top of my head at the time, Middlesbrough had Janino, Ravanelli, Emerson. Bolton had JJ Okocha and Yuri Djurkaev. Saints had Matt Letizia. Newcastle, Ginola and Asprilla. Even Sheffield Wednesday had Carboni and Blinker. And then, of course, there's people like Di Canio at West Ham, who was a Maverick. Kincladze, can you remember him at Man City? I used to love him. Yeah. They were everywhere, and every team had them. And now I think most teams have technically very good players because their first touch has to be very good, but they're physically powerful, quick, strong, and play very well within a set structure. So I don't know. Maybe the game will come full circle again one day, and your Mavericks or your street footballer types like your Rooneys will thrive once again.
I always remember somebody saying, I don't know if it was on a coaching course or where I picked it up from, but football's like fashion. So flares might be in the 70s, and then they're out again and back in the 90s.
I had a pair.
Yeah.
I knew I'd give you the giggles.
And football can be very similar, can't it? Sometimes Chelsea had a phase where they were attacking with high wide wingers that were beating a player and then changed the way they play, more direct.
Yeah.
And
now it's 4-3-3, playing out from the back and inverted.
Yeah, and it can take a Pep Guardiola to change the game in a country and maybe Europe, and then suddenly everyone's doing it in every academy, aren't they? And then somebody else finds a new way of breaking down that team, and that becomes the fashion again.
The antidote to it, and then it changes again and goes through cycles, as you said. How it affects youth coaching, I think the clip that I was sent was Michael Owen saying basically if you're a big, strong athlete and you can run quick, you've got half a chance because you just teach those people how to have a good first touch and fit them into a system, and you can play. And I think there is a lot of that. If you watch like under 23s professional football club teams, it's very strong, powerful, all play into a set pattern, physical, but everyone, because it's quick, everyone needs a good first touch. But players that can do something out of the ordinary, off the cuff, take players on, I think it might be a long time before we see them again, because it's been coached out of kids from a very young age, maybe due to so much pressure being on managers, even at grassroots level, to win games of football. It's an interesting debate. It'd be great to know if anyone else has got some thoughts on it, or even a little bit of research on it. I can only really see from what I can see, and comparing it to what I've seen in the past. And yes, the game has changed.
We need the next Messi to come through, don't we? And then everyone will be trying to create the next Messi.
Yeah, but they're generational talents, aren't they? We were lucky to have Ronaldo and Messi at the same time, and the old debate of which one's better, I always used to say, does it matter? Enjoying both. But whether... I mean, what's the closest we got to that now? I mean, De Bruyne is world class, but he's not... I won't cast him as a maverick. I just don't know. Foden in this country is maybe the closest thing we've had to a Joe Cole. He can twist and turn and maybe create something out of... I think people would be screaming at me now, going, what about this player and what about that player? But off the top of my head, I can't really see where that player is.
JJ Okocha.
What a player.
When
he tried to rainbow flick, was it Ray Parler? I'm sure he did.
Or a Dixon or somebody. It was definitely against Arsenal, wasn't it?
Yeah, it might have been Dixon. But yeah, I mean, those great moments. I just think there's so much riding on these games now that... Could you call them as luxury players, some of them? Because they're not going to do it week in, week out. You can't get away with it anymore. There's just too much money.
I still think if that type of player is good enough to win you a game, you fit him in your team, don't you? I still think that now. I don't know what you think.
Well, it depends. If a player like that might get away with being like a Matt Letizia was, where he would do moments of magic, but then he wouldn't help the team in other areas. And you might get away with that in a mid-table team, but you need more consistency if you're going for Champions Leagues and titles. So maybe you'd struggle there. And if you're in a relegation battle, you can't be relying on someone to tip up and turn it on. So it's a very difficult one, and it's a really interesting debate, hence why I put it in, because I was having this convo and found it fascinating.
I suppose...
Well, am I looking back with tinted glasses a little bit? Tinted glasses.
Possibly. I don't know.
There's no denying the game's faster, it's quicker. Players all round games better touch. Fullbacks can now play football. Centre halves can get it off the keeper and play. They're better technical players.
But this is right at the top end professional, isn't it? If we are linking it back to...
Which we should.
Youth football. I think our concern will be youth coaches only trying to replicate that and having like a mistake-free culture where it's low-risk football, and then you're definitely not going to develop those type of maverick players that can go past a player and excite you and get you off your seat, if they're only allowed to play 1 and 2 touch and not lose the ball.
Yeah, exactly that. And you hear it all the time, don't you? Pass.
Release it.
Yeah, play the way you're facing. Everyone loves a player that can beat a player until they don't beat the player, and then they get hammered for it. Much more so than if someone tries a clever pass and gives the ball away, or just giving it away in general. I think if someone's tried to take somebody on and lost it, everyone sort of jumps on it, as if it was a selfish act that player was maybe showing off a little bit. And it's great when it works for the team, but when it doesn't, it's frowned upon. I don't know. It's interesting. And I haven't managed a team for a good 7 years now, and it was getting different then, changing then. So I'm not sure what it's like on the sidelines at grassroots football now. Obviously, I coach a lot of grassroots footballers, but not in that team environment. I've got visions of everyone trying to copy Pep and play out from the back, and children being quite scared too. Although it depends what age group, because they've probably still got the retreat rule. which means they can probably play it out from the back and play that way. Be interesting. Be great to hear from some managers, some parents, see what their thoughts are on it. Will we see a Gaza, a Joe Cole, a Giggs, a McManaman, a Rooney again? Not for a while, I wouldn't have thought.
Yeah, it'll come round.
Okay.
It will. It has to.
We'll probably be on episode 2816 of the podcast.
Yeah.
Right, should we move on, Jeffrey?
Yeah, so I need the
random number generator.
Have you got the list of numbers in front of you that we've already
previously had? Now that would be something, wouldn't it? But yes, I have on the laptop in front of me here.
Right.
They're not in order, which would have been much more sensible. But we'll find them.
Randomise.
Yeah. Oh, I could do a... Oh, no, I won't do that.
294.
294. Well, considering it only goes up to 150, mate, we're doing well.
Oh, I must have changed that for the last holiday camp then.
Yeah.
I
mean, the book's big enough as it is. I don't want to be writing second volume yet.
Where do I change that? There?
Yeah.
Yeah. How many?
Maximum 150. There we are. Not great radio, is it?
No. Apologies.
It's all right.
150. Randomise. 3.
After all that, we get a low number. Right. I've got the only copy of the book, so I'm in charge. Number 3.
Oh,
we haven't had number 3.
Links quite nicely into what we were just talking about.
It does. We have a habit of doing that, don't we? Right. Chapter number 3 of the book. Did you win? Did you score? How to help your child succeed at football and life is embrace mistakes and failure. And the quote is, if you're afraid to fail, then you're probably going to fail. And that's by Kobe Bryant. And it's interesting because this chapter is the next one that I'm due to do for the extra time. So we'll give you a little snip of it now, and if you like it, and you haven't bought the book yet, which you should have, by the way, but if you haven't, then look out for the next extra time, because I think that's the next one I'm due to do. So I'm doing them in order. And I've done 2, and this is number 3. So see how I've worked that out, Geoff? I've probably got it all wrong, but I'm sure that's the case. Right, so embrace mistakes and failure. It's quite a long opening paragraph, so we'll get stuck in. Quite simply, mistakes accelerate the learning process through the failure feedback loop. Children need constant feedback through failure to grow and develop. Mistakes need to be embraced and seen as opportunities to learn and grow rather than failures. When I first started coaching, I was scared of mistakes. I wanted the perfect sessions with every child breezing through each drill and the parents watching how amazing it was. I used to plan sessions, and if I thought 1 or 2 of the children might struggle with it, I'd make it easier so there would be no mistakes. I basically planned the sessions around the few players with the least experience and what would look good. Thank goodness I saw the light and changed my approach, as perfect sessions are not how learning and growth are done. Unfortunately, I see the majority of coaches still have a no mistake attitude, and it stifles children's development. Most coaches frown upon mistakes, leaving children scared to try anything. A coach's job is to set up games and practices where there are as many opportunities to make mistakes as possible. The coach then has something to teach and can guide the children through the learning process. A really good coach will know what they want to teach and will set up sessions so the children make the mistakes they want them to make, so that they can then guide them through the improvement process. This is not a coaching book, but I thought it was very important to include this as you can play your part as parents. And then it goes on, Geoff, to explain how parents can play their part in that. And there's a few key takeaways that I've highlighted in bold. Always praise the intent and be clear to point out that it is good to try things, even if the outcome isn't quite what they wanted. And we've got learning and growth only happen by stretching the boundaries and coming out of the comfort zone. Protect your child from anyone who instills any sort of fear of mistakes in them. I think that goes for life, Geoff, as well as sport. And then the end quote is by Coach John Wooden, one of my inspirations, and it is, if you aren't making mistakes, you aren't doing anything. So there we go, Geoff. What do you think of that?
Brilliant. That's what I think of it. Please, could you read the first quote again, Kobe Bryant?
If you're afraid to fail, then you're probably going to fail.
Yeah, both quotes brilliant.
Yeah, I mean, this is a big theme throughout the book. I mean, the next chapter afterwards is encourage self-expression and flair, which has led on from that. So, yes, coaches that are listening, please try not to worry too much about mistakes. And I get it. I was there, and I still sometimes struggle when I've got players making loads of mistakes and you feel like you're being judged and you've got parents watching and they think, oh, this is a load of rubbish. Look at them, they can't even do this. And you're like, well, yeah, that's what I've designed it for, so that they struggle and they come out of their comfort zone and they make mistakes, and then I know where they're at, and then I can adapt and change things and help them through that learning process. I think there's more, well, there's a quote in here somewhere that says, you know, coaching's not about structure. Most learning is done through chaos and randomness. But I was going to say structured chaos and randomness, but maybe that's not the right word. But well thought out chaos and randomness with an intent in mind, which I presume is why constraints-based coaching and conditions are, I was going to say all the rage, but they're probably not all the rage, but there's a lot of evidence that you can get a lot out of it, basically.
Because it'll avoid coaches setting up a mistake-free session, I guess. When I think that's what people think of when they talk about drills and different things. That's what they think we're talking about when we're talking about ball mastery and different things like that. Whereas really that's about exploring and making mistakes still, isn't it? When we have ball mastery. Culturally, it's massive, isn't it? And the language you use, I think, when you're talking about your session and what you're trying to achieve. I can't remember the guy's name that does a lot of, it's not motivational speaking, but speaking at big conferences and things. I was listening to just today or yesterday about if you are flying a plane and you're told not to crash into a building, you probably will. And if you're skiing down a slalom and say avoid the trees, you'll probably crash into the trees. So it talks about follow the snow, and that's just a language change that actually can make what you're trying to do exciting, because you're trying to achieve something rather than avoid making the mistake when your brain can't tell the difference between. I think he opened it up with, don't think of an elephant, and the first thing you do is think of an elephant. So you can't not do that because your brain can't differentiate between the two. So language around this, I think, is really important for both parents and coaches.
Do you know what I took out of that? You had time to listen to some keynote speaker
yours.
And not my extra time. That's my big takeaway.
Yeah, but I can remember your name, Pez. So.
That's true. I remember, I think it was Damien Hughes, who does the High Performance podcast. He did a lot of work around that type of stuff, and I'm sure the psychologists have got some terminology for some name for that. But yes, the language is very important. Did I just mention some of that in that as well? Always praise the intent, even if there's a mistake. So I try and do this a lot, because if the intent was good, you want to praise the intent and not worry so much about the mistake. Because, for instance, someone might try a nice reverse pass, a defence splitting ball, and it doesn't come off. It might not come off because someone's read it. It might not come off because they're not developed enough to actually have the power on to put the right weight of pass. But the intent is great, and it's the intent that you don't want to coach out of your players. So praise the intent, and not dwell on the outcome, because if you start being disappointed that the outcome didn't happen, then they won't try those things again, and you want them to, because that might be what wins your games one day or separates this player from everyone else because they might see things that other people don't.
Yeah, that's pretty much exactly my point I think I was trying to make. So the learnings I took from it were, so that reverse pass, it wouldn't be don't find the opposition player or avoid hitting that player. It would be, now I will say to my players, this is senior players as well, can we play through the snow? Because I've told them that anecdote and that story.
Oh, right, okay.
Probably much better when I could remember it at the time.
Yeah.
In training sessions and things. So I've even heard, the kids in games now shouting play through the snow rather than
brilliant,
release it, because what I like about that is that might be a dribble past a player through the snow, through the route that you're trying to,
and there's so much freedom within that as well.
Yeah, and your toolbox might look completely different as a player. If you're a small tricky player going through the snow, might be dribbling around 3 players, and it might be it's a wall pass around somebody, or
so don't be scared to find a way, whatever that way is up to them.
Yeah, and then if those players were the trees, you're not saying to them don't hit the trees when you're skiing.
Keep it away from the big fella or something like that.
You're actually going, right, how we following the snow and following that route. So for parents, just that language and how you sit, if you are going to have a conversation in the car on the way home, might be, I could see the way you were trying to play and what you tried to do there. Well done. Keep trying it. Next time it'll come off. Or
yeah, I mean, there's so much on language, and that it might be one of the reasons why when teams go to some of these bigger clubs and they try and set up defensively, and all their training all week's been about the opposition and how we're going to stop them, and they don't concentrate on their own game a little bit. But then sometimes a team will go to these places and just go for it and go, well, we'll give them something to worry about. And sometimes they get a result, and sometimes they get tonked, to be fair.
Yeah.
But
or sometimes they wait too long to go for it, don't they? So
yeah.
The game's already gone, and then they've gone for it, and then if they'd tried that earlier, yeah.
Cool. Good start, Jeffrey. Should we go back to the questions?
Yep.
I shall get them up. Do you want me to read the next one?
Yes, please.
Okay, question number 2 of the day. I'm a coach for an under-8s team, and in training I play lots of small-sided games. The players don't really have set positions, and it's all about contact time with the ball and having fun. However, I have at least 2 players who tell me they're not allowed to play in goal when it's their turn. One even said, "My dad will kill me." It leaves me in an awkward position. I just wondered what your thoughts on this are. Is it something you come across, Geoff? Because I come across this quite a lot.
I think,
in fact, just this week I've had it.
Because I'm with the older age groups, mine is more of an overhang from when they were in your age groups.
Yeah.
So I've still got kids now that won't go in goal, but it won't be my dad tells me he'll kill me. It's just they've never done it, and I think they're petrified of it, and they just, their language is I'm rubbish in goal, don't put me in goal.
Yeah.
So I don't think I get people saying my dad will kill me.
I literally had that recently.
Yeah.
Dad will kill me. I trapped my fingers in the car door when I arrived. Can't go in goal. And I was like, can I have a look at those fingers?
Yeah.
There's nothing wrong with them. I've had mum won't let me play in goal. It just puts you in a really awkward position because you don't want to go against what the parents have said. But I make them go in anyway, unless of course they are injured. But I just think, well, you're part of something here, and you take your turn.
Yeah, quite a nice thing that I've been doing recently is if either team scores, both teams swap goalkeepers, so that can change really
yes, I
fluidly.
picked that up from you as well, so thank you for that. Although with some of the ones in the younger age groups, I think they might let a goal in on purpose, straight out. You have to sometimes look at all angles of these things, and I think that's a possibility.
It's like when I used to have to make a cup of tea for mum and dad, I'd try and do it bad, so I wouldn't have to do it again.
Make a mess. And all that. Just don't ask you again. Kids are clever, aren't they? I wrote here, there's life lessons to be had by players taking a turn in goal when they don't want to. And fairness, you should be fair. It's not fair for the same children to keep going in goal. I mean, I try and number them in my sessions, because obviously we don't have a lot of goalkeepers. So occasionally we've got one on a Saturday morning, he loves going in goal, so he'll stay in there for the majority. And then when he wants to come out, all the heads go down and no one else wants to go in. It's like, well, just take a 4-minute go in goal.
On that, it's about what type of child are you trying to bring up as well. Do you want a child that feels entitled, that they can miss out on what might be seen as the hard graft or the thing that they don't want to do?
If you're a parent that's saying these things, with my sessions, they're going in goal for one game, which tends to be 4 minutes.
Yeah.
I mean, what are they missing out on in those 4 minutes that's going to be the difference for them achieving whatever you want them to achieve? It has to be fair. And I've put here to the guy that sent it in, it's your team.
Yeah.
Don't let anyone dictate to you what fairness looks like or how things should be.
I actually sometimes I do see it, because I do have my school sessions and I do coach younger ones sometimes. I think it sometimes is that child is actually really good in goal, and I think the dad might be petrified that you find that out, and then end up playing in goal, and that's not what they want. They want them to be the one who's scoring all the goals.
I'm sure we've had one like that in the past. Very, very good goalkeeper, and
actually wants to go in goal.
Yeah, and they're like, no, we don't want you to go in goal. It's like, gee whiz.
Yeah.
Let them go and shine and do what they like. Goodness. It's also serious, isn't it?
Yeah, I just trying to think back to my youth, which is now becoming a long time ago. We've talked about it before on this podcast, I used to love the summer six-a-side tournaments that were completely different to the 11-a-side that I played from whatever ridiculous age. But you'd quite often break down into two teams, because you'd have too many for one six-a-side tournament, and then you'd need a goalkeeper, and I quite liked jumping in goal sometimes in a six-a-side tournament just for...
I can understand parents not wanting their child to go in a tournament, or they might not want to turn up and watch their kid in goal and out on pitch, but if it's taking it in turns, half each maybe, or
and if they genuinely
game each
want to do it,
if they generally want to do it, but I mean, I'm talking about training. Happens to me, and I've seen children, when they've been told to go in goal, looking up at the balcony at parents as if, help me, or am I going to get into trouble for this? And you're like, gee whiz, stop doing things that impacts on these kids.
I'm sure there's a story about Wayne Rooney going in goal in Man United's training sessions and being the best goalkeeper.
Yeah, he was pretty. Yeah, it's because goalkeepers are nuts, and he was pretty much nuts when he.
Maybe parents need to hear that story and think, well, actually, if it was okay for Wayne Rooney to do it in training, why?
I don't think you should make or help facilitate your child being scared of anything on the pitch. And if you're protecting them from going in goal, then that's something that they're going to be scared of. And then if it does happen one day, and they find themselves having to go in goal for some reason, they're going to be petrified of it. Just let things take their natural course. Just smiling, Jeffrey, as if good luck with that.
I was just thinking, I think I covered you for a tournament once. And did the goalkeeper have to go early? There was something that happened. And then I think we even had straws, or we did something. And it landed on the one kid that really, really has probably always been told don't go in goal. I might be wrong on that, but they really didn't want to go in goal. But I think they ended up going in goal and having a great time. So, and you'll probably remember that. And
if it goes well, it can boost their confidence.
Yeah.
Right, should we go back to the random number generator?
Yeah, I've just got got
to use some technology, Geoff.
Yeah, randomise.
Yes.
40. Can you check if we've had it already?
Oh, what would I do without you, Geoff? No.
Probably be a millionaire by now.
Probably. Be on my way. Okay. Oh, wow, this looks a big one. Oh, my goodness. And we've touched on this before. What to do if your child wants to quit. And can happen to anyone, and often without any warning. And it's happened to me numerous occasions. My child, from stagecoach to basketball to futsal to football to boxing, that's just off the top of my head. tried them all, been very good at them all, quit them all. It's now gym for him. It's his passion, so he's still doing something. So he's going to the gym a lot. What can you do? What should we find out?
Not a lot if he's getting bigger than you going
yeah,
to the
not
gym.
a lot if he's
probably.
getting bigger than he's getting an inch. He's just got taller than me as well, so he does what he wants, Geoff.
Oh, fair enough.
But he has made noises about returning to football. So, I don't know. Parenthood is difficult, isn't it? Someone should write a book. Oh, they have. Question 40. Well, chapter 40. Right. What to do if your child wants to quit? The opening quote, sunsets are proof that endings can often be beautiful too. And that's from B. Taplin. Right. I shall read the first 3 paragraphs here. Give a little taste to Geoff. There are many reasons why children suddenly decide to quit playing the game. It is quite natural for children to change their hobbies and interests regularly, and football is not immune. Your job as a parent is to find out why they want to quit and then decide how you can help them. It can be very difficult for parents to accept sometimes, and a big thing is made of it. It might simply be that your child has simply had enough of playing and wants to find other activities they like doing even more. Remember, though, that it is also your responsibility to use different situations for life lessons, so children shouldn't be encouraged to quit anything easily, especially if it might mean letting people down. Find out the reasons why and see what you can do to help. Try to take the emotion out of it, although it is easier said than done. It's very difficult if they've always loved playing and it's been fun for the family too. However, it is their decision and they have a right to make choices about what they do for fun. If they're simply not enjoying it, then there might be another team that they will enjoy playing for. You might need to check to see how much pressure you might have been putting on your child yourself. If they are just quitting because they want to stay in bed or play computer games, you might want to help them find other healthy new activities. Handled correctly, a child will often miss playing after a while and want to start again soon after. This is much less likely to happen if you try to force them to play. Force only attracts counterforce, and you might well put them off forever. And that is some of the first page of 5 and a half pages of that one, because I think it's very important to get this right. I'll read out some of the key points that I have mentioned in other paragraphs. As a parent or guardian, it is your job to help facilitate the internal motivators and protect them from the pressure of any external ones. When your identity is entwined with something, you will naturally fight to keep it from falling apart. And that is the big thing with this, Geoff, is when parents, their own identity is entwined in their child's activity. Doesn't matter what it is. That's when quitting and change becomes really, really difficult. And I've seen some upsetting, maybe a bit strong, but I've seen it hit families really hard. So, you know the type, plays football Saturday and Sunday. Mum and dad both take them everywhere, both at training, both at matches.
Watch all the games on TV.
Film a lot of them, put a load of social media posts up about how their child's getting on. Their weekends are now planned around the kids' football. They don't go on holiday when there's games on or big games on. They don't go on during the football. So like everything revolves around it, and then suddenly, bang, kid doesn't want to play anymore. And if you're too entwined and too involved in it, you're going to fight for that, which might mean you don't make the best decisions and even force your child to play, bribe them to play. And I know it sounds dramatic, but it happens. And put an emotional pressure on the child to play. And as I said, force only attracts counterforce, and you might put them off forever, but it's really difficult. So there's a lot of advice in here about how you can be aware if your activities are getting, your identity is getting entwined with your child's activity, and how to be aware of that, how to avoid it, what to do if it is. And obviously, as it says, how to handle things if your child does want to quit. So it's a really important one, which is why there's so many pages on it. I also have, you should never make them feel guilty for quitting, which a lot of parents do, and I might have even been guilty of that with my child, telling them, but I used to love watching you play. I hit him with that, not thinking. You're kind of grasping at straws a little bit, sort of trying to cling on to anything, and that's making them feel guilty because it's not about me, it's about them. But it's a natural response. So it is an important chapter. You used to love playing so much, but not into it anymore. You've got to remember it's about them, and it's really difficult if you're so involved in their activity. I know some parents who think they've got the right for their kids to keep playing because they've sacrificed so much. Holidays, weekends away, petrol, time, not spent enough time with siblings and stuff like that, not taking the wife away for Valentine's, whatever it might be. They think, well, I've put so much skin in the game, so much sacrifice, and now you're quitting. No chance.
I think everybody can think of a time in their life where they didn't want to do something anymore. And it might not be sport, it might be something else, but you should be allowed to stop doing something that you really don't enjoy anymore, if that's
but
how
like
you feel guilt-free.
Touched on, you need to find out why. It might be they're not just getting on with the manager, or there might be a kid in the team that's bullying them. So before you can make any really good decisions, you'll have to get to the bottom, or at least try to get to the bottom of the reasons why. And if it's because they're being lazy, like I said, and want to stay in bed playing computer games as well, my Josh, no chance. You're doing something. So it's the gyms, that's fine. Or could be anything, I don't mind, as long as it's creative and constructive, and preferably physical as well, to help with
and keeping you out of trouble.
And keeping out of trouble, which is also a problem as they get older, as we all know. What else have I got here? Key takeaways. In life, change and new beginnings all start from something that's had to be quit. I like that.
Mm-hmm.
Can I say that about something I've written? I like that. I suppose I can. Try to avoid using the word quit altogether. So obviously that's a bit out of context, so there's much more of that in there. If, for whatever reason, your child is leaving their team, then it is of the utmost importance that it is done in the correct way with dignity and respect. And that stems from when I've had players quit my team and you get a little text from the parent. And I don't think that's the way to do it. If a child's going to quit, although they have every right to, I wouldn't make it easy for them. I'd make them go and speak to the coach, maybe explain to them why, go and say, thanks coach for everything, but I'm no longer enjoying it. Maybe have a bit of conversation. You can have a really good life lesson there, depending on their age. And of course, if the coach is the reason why they're leaving, then you wouldn't put them in that uncomfortable position. But if there's a chance for a life lesson, never ignore it. And I don't think children should think that quitting is easy, because then that can become a habit, and then when anything gets tough, or they're having a bad moment, or they're plateauing at something, that's right, I'll just quit. Yeah. That's why there's 5 pages on it, Geoff.
That's why there's a life lesson in there, isn't there? To make sure that that isn't the person you become.
Yes. And I know it's difficult, because as I said, I don't always practice what I preach, and there have been some of those sports I've mentioned where I have texted the coach and told them, and I feel guilty now because I didn't follow my own advice. We're all human. But hopefully the book will make you aware of things like that and show you that there are ways that might make things better, I suppose. Cool. Should we go on to the next question?
Next question is number 3. Is that right? So I'm reading this one out.
Yes.
It's a long one, so apologies.
I have it in front of me.
I had a brief run through the chapters, but I'm unsure if there is anything on dealing with on-field trash talking from opponents. This has occurred a few times recently to my youngest boy and has made him very upset and in tears. I believe it is just a tactic to get under his skin and affect his performance. Any help would be appreciated in how to block this out mentally.
Yeah, this came in from, as you probably noticed, from someone across the pond.
Trash talking.
It's a very good question, and they have my book, which is why they've said they've sort of gone through the chapters to see if there's anything on it. And actually, I wish I had put a chapter on it, so maybe there is room for a volume 2 of my book. The closest in my book is probably the controllables chapter, and even maybe the match scripts one, but nothing specifically about how to deal with trash talking. What do we call it over here? Sledging. Is that the right term?
In cricket,
it's in cricket.
Yeah.
Banter, maybe even, which has become quite an ugly word now, isn't it? Banter in this day and age. But of course, we can discuss it now, can't we, Geoff?
Yeah.
Is it anything that you've had to deal with as a coach, manager, or player?
I mean, you get the odd one saying when they're really young, they've said I'm really bad because the team's just lost and they might have been the one in goal, and children do just tend to try and take it out on somebody else when they're really young, don't they? But that's more from their own teammates. But I kind of feel like they've answered their own question, saying I feel it's just trying to get under their skin. And again, it's a good learning opportunity. Do you get it? Or have you had this question posed to you when you've run your teams before, Pez?
No, it's exactly what you've just said. I get it a lot in the younger age groups. Tiny Tim's just said I'm rubbish, and things like that, with someone just emotionally lashing out, I guess, and you deal with that in whatever way you feel necessary. But this is obviously grassroots football. It could even be higher than that, I don't know, with players, as they've said, trying to get under skin, trying to affect their game and get in their head. What I would try and do, if it was my player or my child, first off, I would make it clear that your child must be very good or doing something really well and consistently well, because it's only really good players that get attacked verbally. Otherwise, there's no point in getting under their skin and trying to change their game. You know, it's probably why it never really happened to me, because I wasn't good enough. But I think that's a really good starting point. So it's kind of almost a positive that they can use as a superpower, maybe, that, okay, so I'm getting trash talked, I must be doing something really, really well here. So that might be a good starting point. And I know it's difficult for children to ignore. I had an older brother who used to tease me mercilessly, and I couldn't not react because he just pushed the right button. So I know it's difficult, but it's a very good life lesson in there somewhere. It's dead easy to say, yeah, just ignore it. So I think if you can reframe it as they're doing it because you're doing things well. If you're having a bad game, they're not likely to be doing it. So take it as a compliment to start with. I have heard of things like wearing some sort of band around the wrist, like a snapback band or something they call them. And if you are getting sort of trash talked or your emotions run away from you, I've got a band on now, and you can just play with it, bring it back and snap it. And I'm not a psychologist, but that's supposed to help you channel your emotion and give you a reminder. So it might be that it's a reminder that you must be a really good player, and you just play with this band on your wrist. Might be something for you to look into or research, or chat to a sports psychologist about it. If it's a real problem, you know, get some much better advice than we give out, Geoff, because most of what we give out is based on our own experience, and it's not really something that we've come across. I've heard players get angry at other players and say things that are nasty, but I don't know whether I've been lucky with the leagues I've played in, but managers have then tend to have substituted that player for a while until they've calmed down and the game goes on. But I know it must go on as they get older, sort of 12, 13, 14s, and slyly, and the pitches are bigger, so you're not likely to hear it so much from the sideline, and people being underhand. And there might even be parents and coaches that encourage that type of player, win at all costs. So
it's definitely an opportunity for a life lesson again, though, isn't it? Depending on the age of this child, like if they can learn to almost squash the trash talking with a clever, witty, kind of disarm them with something.
That's what I used to do.
I think that's a great way.
As an adult, though, maybe not as a kid, I wouldn't have had the confidence. But
yeah, but if you can almost turn it round so it's not nasty back, but then you are literally taking it as a compliment, especially if you give one back, isn't it? It's, as in a compliment back.
Yeah,
it might help that.
And there's a difference if you're playing well and someone's trying to get into your head, so you're not playing well. There's a difference to that than someone just doing it for doing its sake.
Yeah,
that's bullying.
Yeah,
and that should be flagged up. And I mean, there's this argument that it's all bullying and shouldn't go on. And it should be flagged up really to coaches.
But this child needs to learn that it's a problem with the other child, not themselves.
Yes.
That's what I'm getting at.
That.
And if they can understand that and use it to disarm when it's happening, then
you don't want a big slaggy match. It would have to be done witty.
I'm not saying get into that. I'm saying, is there a clever way where you're not nibbling but you're smiling back and carrying on and taking it as a compliment?
Firstly, I would do everything possible if it was me as a player not to let them think they've got under my skin, even if they have. So good body language, keep smiling if you have to, and as I said, control the controllable. There's a lot of that in the chapter in here. So what can you control at that point in time? And you can still control, you still want the ball, you can control your movement, you can control lots of factors that player has no effect on, that's trying to get into your head. And the match scripts one is all about, and I took this off, was it Making the Ball Roll by Dan Abrahams? I can't remember. From his book, he talked about match scripts, and I sort of jumped on it because it works, because I've tried it. And having 3 key things in a match that you want to work on. And then you've just got 3 things that you can stick to, and then if this is happening, they can either, maybe like I said, with the band or a parent or a coach, and say stick to the script. So it kind of resets you again and go, okay, what was the script? Go wide, get crosses in the box, or whatever it might be, or keep wanting the ball under pressure. Stick to the script, and it can become sort of a mantra. We tried it in that cup final that we did when we played. We were under 9s, we played up here at under 10s, and they all had 3 things. And the only thing I ever had to shout out was, stick to the script, everyone. And that was it. And they all knew what it was, and ended up winning the game on penalties, which is an amazing day out for them.
We play against a futsal team in Tier 1 who are constantly shouting out, stick to the framework, which is the same thing, isn't it?
Right, yeah, okay.
When the games are getting intense and there might be a moment where players might lose their heads, they just stick to what is their match scripts.
I have had it as a manager. It's in the book. There's a few anecdotes in there. I had it so bad once. I was on my own. Sort of top of the table clash. And this other team had a coach over on the side of the parents, 2 coaches over on my side, so I was on my own. Intimidating guys. Language was awful. This was under 10s, maybe under 11s. I think under 10s.
I think I had that group at under 11s the following season.
Yeah, so I had them at under 10s. And then they tried to sneak a coach or a parent around the back of each goal. Because it was on one of those big playing fields where there's lots of games going on at once. And they were all shouting out, all being intimidating. And they were both walking in front of me as I was trying to watch. And I was thinking, I'd love to trip one of these up. But I'm on my own. And I felt quite intimidated. And it does get in your head. So I have had it as a manager. And it just goes to prove that even at under 10s, some people take it way too seriously and will do anything to win. So it's a very difficult one for your child if they're getting it a lot. But if they're getting it a lot, there must be for a reason, and you know that reason I expect is because they're making things happen in a game, and it might be the only way that these people think that they can stop them. So turn it into a superpower, which is exactly what I wrote there. Superpower. Happy?
Very.
Good. I hope we did that some justice, because it's not something that we're used to dealing with.
No.
What are we on now?
Back on to
The book.
the chapter.
Yes.
Randomise. 1, 3, 3. We've already had it. I just saw it on your screen.
Oh, did you? 1, 3, 3.
It's down at the bottom.
Yes, we have. Oh, the system works.
1, 1, 4.
1, 1, 4.
No.
No. So let's delve right in. There's 1, 1, 1.
Oh, we've not been writing these down this week, have we?
Oh no, that means I have to listen to the whole thing again.
Unlucky.
Well, there was 3, wasn't there? And 1, 1, 4. There's a pen. Write them on your hand. Good lad. 1, 1, 4. Oh wow, this just ties into what I've just been saying a little bit. Don't be a PlayStation parent, because there's one chapter that is don't be a PlayStation manager. Something along those lines, or avoid them, which is kind of what I was just talking about. So 114, don't be a PlayStation parent. And the opening quote is, a child's shoulders were not built to bear the weight of their parents' choices. That's by Toby Mack. Cheers, Tobster. It's a good one. And I shall read out again. Let's see how... It's not that long a chapter, but I'll read out 2 or 3 of the first paragraphs. I've talked a lot about managers and coaches trying to influence things by shouting instructions, but the same thing applies to parents as well. One of the biggest factors in children not fulfilling their potential is pressure. The easiest way to put pressure on a child is to shout at them during matches. Add in a few pep talks in the car and rewards for scoring goals, and you're well on your way to helping your child to be average, or at least never fulfilling their potential. Cool, Geoff, that's going quite deep, isn't it? Shouting at your child from the sidelines is as useful as teaching your child to swim by throwing them in the deep end and shouting at them to swim. Very occasionally, a child might not sink, but I think you'd agree that it's not really worth the risk. I've never seen parents get so involved and start shouting instructions while watching their child doing other activities like art, computer games or skateboarding. But football is different. Why is it so important? What message does this send to the child? Try standing behind your child when they're playing a video game. Maybe offer some advice, even some encouragement. See how quickly the fun goes out of it for them. Stand behind them while they're doing their homework. Maybe shake your head a few times and fold your arms. See how this affects their concentration. I think we all know that these actions are going to have a negative impact, and you wouldn't dream of doing them. Yet hundreds of us do it every weekend while watching our kids play football. Why is it, Geoff?
I don't know. There's some
Why does it bring out the worst in you?
great analogies.
Not just
in there.
you, I mean the general you. I'm fascinated by this, and I look for it all the time, and I get it even at Pezza Street Soccer, which is just individual training and free play matches in a nutshell. And yet as soon as those matches start, there'll be some parents that crawl out of the woodwork and start shouting, go to the ball, tackle, get away. And you're like, it's like someone's switched a switch on the back of your head. Shut up. I get really het up about it, but I don't say much unless I really have to, because I'm fascinated to watch, and I listen and try and think, what are they thinking? Why are they shouting that out? How can they possibly think that that's helping their child in this training match?
But they do. That's why they're doing it. They think they're helping.
We had one just last week, myself and Football Paul, after school club. Parent stood watching, which, you know, I've got to think, why are you watching an after school club? Anyway, so they watched the after school club session. As soon as the match started, they came through the gate and started pacing up and down the sideline. And it was one where there was a group of the class were away on some trip or something. So we'd thrown them all in together, and Football Paul was in one goal and I was in the other, and basically just letting them play a 7-a-side, fairly big pitch. but it's pretty much all we could do with what we had for the end game. They want to play a match. Anyway, this parent was like it was the World Cup final. It's quite mixed age groups, very mixed experiences. Everyone's having fun. Some of them are chasing around after the ball. I get it. But what's their impact of shouting out for the 10 minutes of the session we had left going to actually have? That one actually wound me up. I didn't find it fascinating. I thought, I'm going to have to go and speak to this parent in a minute. Don't suppose it's something you come across much anymore in your age groups, is it?
It is bizarre behaviour, isn't it? I'm sure it does happen, but I don't think I hear a lot of it because I'm so invested in what I'm thinking about. So sometimes when somebody else that I know is also watching, they'll let me know afterwards what was going on the other side, but I tend to just ignore it and hope it goes away, and I never really have had any problems at futsal, that's for sure. Different environment, isn't it?
I had one on Saturday as well, asked to go out for a drink, and then so I went out. Where's he gone? And he's gone up the stairs to the balcony because his dad's keeping his drink so that he can talk him through what he's doing well and what he's not in 3v3 and 4v4 free play games, and it just baffles me. Should just give them a copy of the book, shouldn't I? But they wouldn't read it, I'm sure, because they clearly think they know better. But I don't know what it is with football. It brings out the worst in a lot of people.
It just needs. It's like it's an old building that's falling down, and it needs to be knocked down and started again from the bottom, doesn't it? Football culture. It's just. I don't know any other word than bizarre. Why?
Because it's not as bad in rugby.
Yeah.
And, you know, if your child's at a swimming gala thing, you tend to just shout out encouragement. You know, go on, go on. You're not shouting, turn now, or, you know, put one arm in front of the other. It's a bad analogy, but you know what I mean? You're not throwing out bits of advice. You might do beforehand and, you know, say about the start gun or something and to focus and all positive stuff. But football, just everyone seems to be an expert.
What do you think goes on in a parent's head? What self-talk do they give themselves to justify doing it?
I don't think they give it much thought.
I
think it's just natural. They think they can give their child an advantage by delivering their pearls of wisdom.
Or do you think they think, I know my child best, and if I shout this now, that's going to really help them in the next action? Or
yeah, possibly. And some of them might think, well, if the coach isn't telling them to do this, then I will. Yet your coach might have reasons why they're not coaching or stopping, standing still every 2 minutes.
Just a good philosophy on coaching. And not being a PlayStation coach. Yeah.
Parents want to impact, and the easiest way to impact is to shout out. But what it tends to do is confuse the child, put pressure on them, sometimes make them upset, make them think it's more important to their parents than it is actually to them. There's so many negative connotations. That's a big word, isn't it, for me? But there are so many negative connotations.
Is it that they would all turn up and be quiet and clap, but because one has done it, everyone then thinks it's almost a competition to show...
I've seen that before. Who can shout the loudest?
Who loves their kid the most or something. I don't know.
There's elements. There's probably so many elements all thrown in.
They don't want
to
be looking like they don't care as much as the next parent stood next to them that's shouting a lot. So I don't know where it...
I had one mum years ago apologise before a game, saying, I know I get carried away, and would openly admit that they know nothing about football. But then when it starts, they're commentating, cheerleading, and offering advice. And for a manager or a coach, it's agonising.
Somewhere it's been allowed to happen, hasn't it? And it should never have been allowed to happen. If you did it at ballet rehearsals, everyone would look at you like you've gone crazy, wouldn't they? And then you'd either stop because everyone's done that, or you'd be asked to leave. So I don't know why in football it hasn't been stopped at source. It's just become culture, isn't it? That acceptable.
Does it happen at boxing, do you think? Do people shout out, or does they trust the...
Not at training. I imagine if someone's got a bout or something.
What they shout out? Hit him.
Yeah.
Hit him. Uppercut.
Oh, I was planning on letting him hit
Yeah.
me.
Duck. Oh, really? Thanks, Mum. Cheers. Like, I don't know what it is about football that makes everyone think that they...
It makes me cringe, and it makes me... I don't know. I just...
Some parents think it's their right, don't they? They've taken their kid there. They'll do what they want, say what they want, help their kid, give them every advantage. Some have never played football. Some have played Sunday League. Because interestingly, professional footballers that have kids tend not to say a word.
Yeah.
They understand. They just get on with it. Having said that, there was the David Beckham documentary where his dad really pushed him.
Oh, that's going to be the worst thing for grassroots football.
Yeah, so
Dad's watching that.
a lot of people have jumped on
Parents
that now
watching
and
it.
thought, well, if it's worked for Beckham, it'll work for me. But Beckham backed it up with hours and hours of individual practice, especially with striking the ball and free kicks. You know, don't just tip up at a match and start getting interested. Facilitate them practicing at home.
And Beckham's probably very fortunate in the fact that he enjoyed it.
Loved it.
Striking a ball over and over. He probably would have done it
Yeah.
with or without his dad, I think.
Something in his character that could take it.
Yeah.
Tiger Woods at golf, his dad was really, really hard on him, and by his own admission has caused him all sorts of psychological problems in his older age, I should say. But he did reach the top in his sport. But there's always a trade-off, isn't there?
Well, imagine the millions of other children that could have the same style parenting. And,
because the stats aren't going to change on how many make it, are they?
No, exactly. And then we're going back to the last chapter of what do I want to do if my child wants to quit. I think you'll get that a lot more. Or the last question. Was it chapter or question?
Chapter. But, you know, if you are one of these parents that likes to shout out, maybe just try and refrain for one game and see if it changes how you approach it and watch it and enjoy it. See if your child reacts to that. I don't know. It's a difficult one, isn't it? I always say that. It's a difficult one. It's all difficult. Because there wouldn't be need for me to write a book or do a podcast or research so much and try to help so much. There's no blueprint to it. All I know is shouting out's never been one that helps. Encouragement.
It's about being a football parent rather than a football fan, isn't it? If you want to stand in the pub screaming and shouting at a screen with your mates,
yeah,
where your kids aren't around, then go and doing it. But you can't. You just got to be a parent on the sideline, not a football fan. It's a difference, isn't there? A big difference.
And you know it's a problem because the FA keep doing. Used to be called Silent Sundays, didn't they? But now with the emergence of these Saturday leagues, I think Silent Weekends, where there's whole leagues and matches, well, all of them, I suppose, under the FA banner for that weekend. You're not allowed to shout out from the sideline. You're allowed to clap. I think you're allowed to encourage, but nothing else. So they know it's a problem, or there wouldn't be a need for it. But it's horrendous, some of it. It's not a nice atmosphere for anybody, especially the children. What I used to like as a kid is when someone else's parent used to encourage me. I used to get a real boost from that because I used to think they don't have to do that.
Yeah.
There's no need for them to do that.
On the flip side, I can remember other people's parents hammering kids, including myself. It's horrible.
Yeah, that is horrible.
And
that makes you think, what am I doing here?
I think my dad watched me play once in my whole youth football time, and he said I'm never going back again because I know what's going to happen. Basically, he's going to fall out with everyone.
Yeah, there must be plenty of parents who know nothing about football, never been interested, and they're taking their child along and think, what is this? What do I have to sit through every week? These snarling, growling, frustrated adults.
And then I feel sorry for them because I reckon they'll be seen as like snobs, football snobs that don't join in with it all. And it's not snobbery, is it? It's just sensible.
A lot of these parents justify it by being passion, and there's other ways of showing passion. I don't think you have to rage like a lunatic on the sideline and
The
talk your kid through every move.
biggest red flag for that is somebody who says, "I just tell it like it is," isn't it, Pez?
Yeah, we've known a few of those too. I should say those coaches that were walking past me that day and trying to intimidate me actually came up to me, it's in the book, after the game and apologised and said, "It's all part of the game though, isn't it?"
Yeah.
And it's like, well, no, not really. Like, it's under 10s football, mate.
I'm pretty sure we came up against them the following season when I had that team, and I had exactly the same experience walking in front of me.
Really nasty
Yeah.
at under 10s. And I expect there's horror stories all over the country. I mean, that was the closest I came to it, where I actually felt intimidated. And you thought, well, if we win this game, you know, I've got to go to the car park on my own and stuff. You know, those things were entering your head. It was that ferocious. And it was, like I say, a kids under 10s game of football. I think we should try and end on a positive somehow, Geoff.
Have we got one more question?
We have got one more question, but it might be...
Is it more positive?
We can put a positive spin on everything. Should we try and finish the last question then? Question number 4. How late is too late to join a grassroots team if you decided you want to play professionally? I have a 13-year-old who suddenly decided that's what they want to do and is all they talk about. Jeffrey, batting it over to you, sunshine.
Without being negative, it's not up to you to decide whether you want to play professionally or not. It's up to other people's opinions.
Control the controllables.
On your efforts and your commitment and your attitude to your personal development, isn't it? So it's one of those things. You should always encourage your children to be whatever they want to be and try whatever they want to try, but you can't just decide that you're going to be a professional player. You have to commit to a lot, and when those hurdles come along, you've got to work incredibly hard to get past them, and there will be a lot of hurdles. It's not saying it won't happen, but you should commit to enjoying the process and the journey and everything that goes with it.
Getting all the amazing things out of football.
Yeah.
And not worry about that outcome, because that could spoil it all.
And reframe it from want to play professionally to I want to go as far as I possibly can in the sport, rather than that.
I want to fulfil my own potential, see where it takes me. How do I do that? Well, there's a process to go through. Well, I'm going to try and commit to that process, and if it's enjoyable, you've got half a chance of fulfilling your potential. Whether that is going to be good enough, or you get the luck or the right place, right time, or whatever it might be to become a professional, that's up to the footballing gods.
There's definitely stories of people that have started much later than everybody
Theo
else.
Walcott, I wrote down here, started late, but was already an athlete. And I mean, I've name dropped, but I obviously knew Theo quite well for a number of years when I was at Southampton, and I wish I'd asked him at the time, because it's quite well known that he came into the game late, and I think probably at under 12s or under 13s, something like that. But how much football had he played with his mates beforehand?
Yeah.
How much had he played on the street and at school? Whether this stat that came out later that he came into football late was that he came into organised football late.
Or academy football or something,
Yeah, so there's a big difference between organised. I think if you've never played any sort of football, you're going to struggle at under 13s, but don't let that put you off playing the game, because there's so many wonderful things like friendships and experiences that can come out of playing football. Don't have that as your outcome.
But if you want an accelerated learning environment, where's the best place for a child at that age to go, Pez?
Pez's Street Soccer.
Or any futsal base, wherever you are in the country or in the world?
No, just Pez's Street Soccer. I've got to throw it in.
No,
very true. Futsal.
Every country in the world, then.
Yeah, that'd be nice. I struggle to do what I've got to do with the one I've got. But yes, futsal really is a good place to accelerate your learning and development. Everything's accelerated and magnified and more touches, and we've been through it many times before, haven't we, Geoff?
Yeah.
So, in answer, don't give up on those dreams, but don't make that the reason why you're playing, because if that's your only reason, I think you're going to fall at all the hurdles along the way very quickly. if that's your main aim and your focus.
And possibly annoy your coaches if the parents ask him what they got to do to become a professional every week, and they're just starting at 13 years of age.
Yeah, it's like me now at 22, deciding I want to play FIFA professionally or something. It's not likely, is it? But you'd say, well, buy the game and enjoy it and practice, and I wouldn't worry about that, Pez.
That's quite a positive note to finish on, I think, mate.
What, me being 22?
You being 22, yeah.
Goodness gracious, if only. So, should we wrap it up there?
Yeah.
It's been a good one. I've enjoyed that. You can agree, Geoff, and say...
I could, yeah.
Yeah. I know you enjoy it really, deep down.
Somewhere, yeah.
Somewhere. You're just too good at it, Geoff. They need your input and your pearls of wisdom.
You just want to have somebody to look at and back questions to occasionally, that's all. But
And who better to look at
I'm
than
quite
you,
happy
Geoffrey?
to be here to do that, Pez.
But thanks, mate. I do appreciate you coming along and listening to me waffle on, setting things up for me. Yeah, top man. So appreciate that. We'll wrap it up there. So please do not forget that football really isn't that important, but children are. And we will see you next time.